Alright, so a quick note before we get started. This is not at all a video that's meant to be like a scathing indictment of the Steam Deck hardware or its software, like, that it's deficient in some area or something like that. Nor is it some sort of like, fanboyish argument where I talk about how much better some other system is than the Steam Deck or anything like that. Like I mentioned in the title and the thumbnail for this video, this is a completely petty, ridiculous, borderline goofy list about some of the things that I've just personally noticed about how the Steam Deck has changed my gaming habits and some things that I just don't like about that. So, all that being said, let's just go ahead and dive right in with one of the first things that I don't really like about the Steam Deck is it has really eaten into my PS5 and Series X time. Now don't get me wrong, I know there are a ton of PS4 and PS5 upgraded experiences or Xbox games that have already made their way to the deck if they weren't just kind of there to begin with as PC ports, but by and large I've always been a console gamer. And one of the things that I like in particular about the PS5 is that DualSense controller and how games like Sifu or Ghostwire Tokyo can literally provide a tactile experience you can just feel better through the controller in a way that you can't get from the Steam Deck. But because the Steam Deck has been an absolute blast that has all but consumed me and by extension this channel, I really haven't spent much time with my PlayStation 5 or Xbox at all. And going back to the Xbox, for a hot second there, I thought the Xbox was going to be my go-to for all multi-platform releases because, for a while it was the Switch, but as my need to, travel and be on the go got reduced, so too did my reliance on the Switch, especially considering that so many games could look better elsewhere, including the Steam Deck. So even now, games that I would have picked up for the Nintendo Switch for the portability aren't really as appealing as they would be on the Steam Deck, and games that I would have picked up on the Xbox because visually it would have been the better experience also are not that appealing, considering that, if I ever wanted to move the experience to a true gaming rig or really just appreciate, that balance between handheld play and greater graphical fidelity, I get that on the Steam Deck. So yeah, that's one thing that I don't really like about the Steam Deck is how it has really just sort of eaten into my PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and Nintendo Switch time. And naturally, if my time spent playing on traditional consoles has sort of taken a dive because of the Steam Deck, you know what else has taken a beating in my gaming life? Physical collecting. Now let me say I've always been and will always be a physical collector. For me, there's just something awesome about looking at a whole shelf full of games, and it kind of reminds me of that Miyamoto quote, which I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially he said that video games are like, favorite playgrounds that you would return to again and again, and how wonderful would it be if we just had a drawer full of playgrounds. That's kind of the lens through which I look at physical game collecting, and I just really appreciate the tactility of that experience. Everything from, looking at the amazing artwork that's been on these cases for just, many generations of console games that have come out, to collector's edition goodies, to leafing through instruction booklets and strategy guides for games from, 10, 15 years ago. And even when consoles eventually and inevitably go full-blown digital, probably within a few generations at this point, I will still be hunting down retro titles until the end of time just because I love the thrill of the hunt, and again, that's one of my favorite parts of the hobby. But lately, I just really haven't felt compelled to go to like GameStop or Best Buy to check out new releases or check out what's on sale or put in any pre-orders or anything like that. I would even say that checking out some of my local shops has really taken a dive ever since the Steam Deck showed up. Now to be fair, some of that time is spent making videos for the channel, obviously, about the Steam Deck, but by and large, again, anytime that I find some downtime where I'm actually ready to just play some games for myself and have some fun, I am reaching for the Steam Deck way more than I'm reaching for an Xbox controller or a DualSense. Particularly for what I call second screen gaming, where you just want to, jump into a game and chill with it while you throw on like a movie or something in the background. Don't get me wrong, I have had a few pickups here and there lately, or stuff that just kind of arrived super late, as is routine, I guess, for limited run games, like, the Scott Pilgrim Collector's Edition showed up, AI the Nirvana Initiative, and I did finally track down a copy of Super Princess Peach on the DS, which I've kind of been on the lookout forever after Gamerthumb TV recommended it to me. But I could say categorically this has been my slowest period for physical collecting in years. Now I did have a big rush of PSP collecting more towards the beginning of the year, but somewhat shamefully, now even those experiences I'm predominantly playing on the Steam Deck because of emulation, and I'm sure as we get closer to the holidays and more games start coming out for these systems that I'll probably get back into the fray when it comes to physical collecting. But as it stands, it just feels really weird for me to have like a number of weeks go by where I haven't gone out and hit some local shops or really, been on the hunt for anything, and I think the Steam Deck has played a really big part in that. But while we're on the subject of collecting games or recollecting games, something else that the Steam Deck is excellent at that kind of bugs me is making me buy games that I already have. Now in a previous video I already went over a bunch of like old PS3 and 360 era games from kind of like that mid-2000s era that play really well on the Steam Deck. But even a bunch of slightly more modern titles from like the PS4 or Switch era have managed to like Trojan horse their way into my Steam library at this point. And I think a lot of that is because the Steam Deck does support games like Sekiro or Horizon Zero Dawn or Burnout Paradise, Gone Home, and of course the serial offender spanning almost 20 years, Resident Evil 4. And for me personally, I can rationalize or at least justify that, particularly in areas of content, right? Like whenever I did that comparison a while back between the Steam Deck and the Switch and used like Horizon Chase Turbo as an example. But beyond that, I would just say that a lot of the games that I've double dipped on, I did so just because they they were awesome to play in the handheld format. And I can't wait for even more, like when we get Spider-Man dropping in August, and inevitably whenever Miles Morales follows suit and makes the leap to PC too, I will sign up and pay full price for that as well. And much like Capcom has this insidious way of having me buy and rebuy their games over and over, even if they're only like incremental upgrades, I think the Steam Deck has exactly the same ability, and it's only further bolstered by like this never-ending parade of sales that it has on some of the best games. Which kind of brings me to my next point. The other thing that I don't like about the Steam Deck is the constant string of deals are killing me. I don't just mean directly on the Steam store either. Prior to actually getting the Steam Deck, I wasn't really familiar with a ton of different like PC gaming marketplaces that weren't Steam, but as it turns out, there's an absolute ton of them and they're all running sales all the time. Not to mention if you follow somebody like Wario64 on Twitter, then you're just constantly getting notified about this string of deals from a ton of different places like Good Old Games or Humble or Fanatical. So in the same way that you might shop for games or compare the sales between physical retailers like Target and GameStop or Walmart and Best Buy or whatever it is, you can essentially do the same thing with digital marketplaces all over the internet, and you will be subjected to a never-ending flood of ways that you can spend money for games on the Steam Deck. The point being that Steam, and by extension the Steam Deck, are just really good at making you blow money on games. And naturally, with a big rush of new games I picked up thanks to sales on a fairly recently released system, in turn I have definitely been neglecting my console friends at least a little bit. Now to be fair, right now I don't really have any regular weekly gaming sessions scheduled with friends or anything, so I'm not like, bailing on raid night for some MMO or something like that, but I am used to just having more regular interactions, again, on the PS5 or the Series X, where I would just randomly jump in and play games like, Rocket League or Fall Guys or Elden Ring or whatever it was. But over the past several weeks, my time spent on Xbox Live and PSN also has taken a huge dive, which, again, I guess makes sense considering I already said the PS5 and the Series X just don't get much love from me right now. But it is something that bothers me about the Steam Deck, and maybe that's more of a me problem, but I still have to credit a little bit of it to the Steam Deck and that device eating up so much of my time. I don't really feel that guilty, right? I don't have any friends yelling at me like, how come we're not playing Minecraft or something like that? But I am used to just kind of ad hoc jumping into more gaming experiences that I have with friends, and it's kind of sad to think that I haven't really been on there that much. Although in my defense, I did get 5 friends together to play a bunch of TMNT Shredder's Revenge when it came out, and it was excellent. And finally, the last thing that I don't like about the Steam Deck, or I guess more appropriately, maybe I should say I'm split on, is I'm a little scared that I'm becoming a PC gaming channel. Now here's the thing, historically I've always said I've been more of a console gamer than a PC gamer. I beat that drum just like a number of times, in various videos that I've put out here, but it is kind of weird to think about, right? Because I've spent so much time talking about stuff for the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox or the Nintendo Switch or retro consoles, that to make the jump to a console that really isn't a console but really truly is just a PC in a console form factor is kind of scary territory for me, if I'm being honest. In my earliest days of making videos, my content was all over the place, and I talked about all kinds of stuff, and then over time I managed to focus a little bit more and say I was just going to talk about video games, and there for a time I was just trying to do my best to create stuff that helped other gaming content creators, and then I realized the algorithm really hated that approach, and I had to narrow down even further and say, okay, I'm only going to talk about video games and try to be a pure gaming channel, as it were. And lately I've been even more focused than that, with a very hyper focus on the Steam Deck. And now, I've had a blast with every video that I've made for the Steam Deck so far, including this one, but it is something to think about, and it does weird me out a little bit, so I'm not sure how I feel about the idea of possibly becoming a pure PC gamer. I don't think that would ever happen, because I love console gaming so much, but it's definitely a seed of doubt that has been planted because the Steam Deck has manifested and I've had so much fun with it, and in turn making so much content for it. But for all I know, that's just me doing some textbook overthinking. But yeah, again, this video was not meant to be something where I tear down the Steam Deck or talk about how terrible it is or anything like that. I'm not going to say that I don't have any legitimate grievances with the system. I've talked about them before on the channel, and maybe one day I'll do a more serious take on it. But for now, I did just want to have fun and talk about some petty things that I've personally noticed about how the Steam Deck has impacted me as a gamer, and I guess in turn a content creator on YouTube. But hey, what about you? Are there any just weirdly petty, goofy, maybe even nonsensical things that you don't like about the Steam Deck? If so, I would like to hear about it. Please let me know in the comments below so we can have a discussion and all that good stuff. As always, thanks for taking the time out of your day to watch the videos. It means a lot. Take care, and I'll see you on the next one.